So these are my mini mannequins, and I'm using these as dress forms for my advanced class. We typically do a costume design lesson where we take a sacrificial student and wrap them in a trash bag and duct tape them together, and then we cut them out and stuff the dress form with newspaper and great stuff. Then we create our own dress forms, and then the kids create a costume out of newspaper that they can cut and paint and hot glue directly onto the dress form. But because of COVID, group projects are becoming quite difficult. I still wanted to keep that project in my curriculum, and so I had the idea to make some mini dress forms for them that they could use in class, and they could also do it individually and still use the same requirements and use the same skills. Let's get started. These are the Barbie doll dress forms I got off Amazon. You can choose to just use these dress forms. They do come with like a cute little stand, but it's really rinky dinky, and they see the hole down at the bottom. You have to open it up and then it like hooks onto it like somewhere right here. You can use these just as is, but because of COVID, I didn't want to go through the hassle of like having my kids pick this up and then having them bring it back with their costume newspaper glued to it, and then me having to clean it up or sanitize it, or you know, and you can already tell like in me making it, I've kind of marred the back of it. And so I can imagine what a kid would be doing it. And so I just decided to use them as molds and to make the paper version, so that way you can just throw it away afterwards and you don't even have to mess with it. It is a little bit labor intensive, and it was worth it for me to give my kids the same experience and teach them the same skills as if we were in person. Things that you're going to need for this project are, of course, your form. It can be a Barbie form or it can be a Barbie doll. This is my K-pop version, my male version of the doll that I'm going to make, and this is kind of me starting on it. So you can have a Barbie doll if you have those around, or you can just buy these forms and use those instead. You're going to need a tray with a sponge in it. I put water in it, and then I put a sponge, a little bit of water, and as it evaporated, it just keeps it super soaked. You need gum tape, and it comes in a roll. It's shiny on one side, and that side's got the glue, and if you know, it's sticky, it's water activated. This one is the reinforced. You can see the lines across it. Again, I've been told that the non-reinforced regular gum tape is better than this one, because this one actually is too soft or it doesn't harden enough, but for our applications it doesn't really matter because we're stuffing it and they are just like tiny dress forms, so it's perfectly fine. But you want to take your gum tape and it comes in a giant like this. It's huge, it's a lot. So you take your gum tape, and I just start cutting it into strips. You're almost like paper mache, actually pretty much exactly like paper mache. And so we're gonna go with this lady right here. So we take one of our pieces and you just kind of wet. You don't want to soak it, but you just kind of activate the gum, and then you just start wrapping her. She'll get her, the first layer is going to be really slippery because she's plastic and this kind of doesn't have anything to hold on to, but after a while it'll start sticking really well to itself. And I start at the bottom, and it's exactly like paper mache. If you find that there are pieces that don't really sit well on curves, you can always snip them to release the stress on the paper, and then it will lay flat. I will show you when we get to one of those parts. And I let the paper fall where it wants to fall. I don't ever force it. So when we start getting around the hip, it doesn't want to lay flat, so I'll just take my scissors, sharpen scissors, and then I'll cut it to release it, just like that. When you get to the chest, you kind of want to cut thinner strips that go over and do kind of an X form. Again, the way that I have constructed these are pretty much the same way a real dress form on a real person would be constructed. You make an X on the chest up to the shoulders. You put one around the waist. I only do about maybe 1.5 layers. I put extra on the chest area and a little bit on like the waist and the hip area. So let me show you how to do the shoulder part before I get too crazy. You take a square, put it right on the shoulder part because it's flat, and then again you just cut a couple pieces, and then you just fold them over. The chest is done the same way. Take a piece, put it over, and then cut pieces to release the stress. And then flatten it down. You just want to flatten it down as much as possible. If you get a little bit of wrinkle, you can cover that up with another piece in a minute, because you're trying, you know, you're going to put multiple layers on it. You want to try and not get the gum tape so wet, because the wetter it is, the glue kind of washes off. So you don't want to get it too wet. And before you ask me, well, how do I know where to cut? I don't know. I just look at it and I just make an executive decision and I just do it. For the shoulder, I'm going to take one of these wider pieces and cut it just in half. I need a thin piece. Actually, I'm going to take two because I need one for the middle. So I take the thin one and then So I typically just stop there. I let it dry before I put the other layer on, or else it just will be super soft. So this is my K-pop dress form, and so I am going to Mod Podge it, and you can use any kind of glue you want. Okay, so now we're gonna cut it out. After we have wrapped our little form in our gummed tape, and then I just put a layer of Mod Podge just because. You take your X-Acto knife and you just score and cut through the back. I use any tool. You can use the end of the X-Acto knife, but I have this thing. And so I will start to pry. And there you go. Which keeps the form pretty good. This is what it looks like after it's taken off of the dress form. So we take just some regular paper. You can use newspaper. I have a lot of this weird butcher paper, so I just stuff it as best as I can. I'm going to try and get it into like the shoulder area, the chest. And you can use, like I said, anything, any kind of paper you want. You can use newspaper, but this is just what I have. And I try and pack it really, really tight. And so once you kind of overstuff it a little, you just take a little bit of hot glue . And you just kind of secure half of it. You don't have to do the whole thing, but you do have to make sure that the back is pretty secure. We're gonna continue to stuff her. Okay, once she's kind of cooled down on the back, I take a chopstick, or you can use a dowel. I eat a lot of Chinese food, so I have a lot of chopsticks. I just take smaller pieces and I start stuffing and really shoving in the paper into crevices that I couldn't really get. And then you see how there's a void, and you just want to keep filling until you don't have any more voids, or you can't put any more in there. Is I stuff it first before I seal it, because the stuffing gives me a better base to be able to hot glue this bottom seam. Okay, and then that's kind of what the back looks like. I know it looks jank, but that's okay. You can choose to cover it. See how that one's covered? So you can go back and cover it. The reason why it looks shiny is because of the Mod Podge that I put over it. I cover the piece and I cover the seam with the gum tape. I will go over and re-Mod Podge it. And they're pretty stout. So after you have stuffed as much paper as you can on the inside and on the top, you want to make sure the back is glued, and you can put more paper on the back to hide the hot glue line. And then I just took some cardboard and I cut out the bottom and the neck. And now we just need to add our stand.